My granddaughter Maya tugged at my skirt during the middle of the reception, her small hand shaking against the fabric. She leaned close so I could hear the whisper that cut through the music. "Grandma, look under the table." I thought she meant a dropped napkin. I crawled beneath the linen, the floor cool against my knees, and my fingers brushed a small folded scrap of paper taped under the table's edge. I unfolded it with the kind of slow motion that makes your chest hollow. 4 words stared up at me. Table 8, add peanuts to child dessert. For a breath, the chandeliers blurred, and the band's bright note felt very far away. Maya is 7 and carries a severe peanut allergy. One careless bite could make her throat close. In that instant, the room split into 2 worlds: the light, the laughter, and the small, sharp paper that might have been meant to hurt. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe. We had driven to the venue in the late afternoon. The greenhouse where the reception was held felt like a secret garden under glass. Vines curled along the rafters, string lights glimmered like fireflies, and the air smelled of lemon cake and candle wax. My son Ryan and his new wife Nicole were at the head table, smiling with that polished ease couples practice for months. I wore my blue cardigan that Chloe had given me. It was soft against my shoulders and smelled faintly of the perfume I use for special days. People I had known for years hugged and introduced new faces. Forks clinked against plates in a steady, comforting rhythm. Everything about that night had been arranged to feel warm and perfect. 3 years ago, Maya had a reaction that sent us to the emergency room under fluorescent lights. Since then, our lives carried a new tenderness and a new list of rules. Epinephrine pins in 3 places, a laminated allergy card in her pocket, and the quiet ritual of asking servers about ingredients. We had taught Maya how to say, in the smallest voice in the world, "I have a severe peanut allergy," and we had shown her the exact place on her chest where an adult should press the EpiPen if panic arrived. Allergies make ordinary meals into careful negotiations. They teach families how to live with attention. So when I found that paper, an odd calm left me, and something else settled in its place, a slow, certain urgency. The handwriting was hurried, and the tape bore the beige edge of the kind catering staff use. Someone had gone beneath cloth and tucked danger into the night. I slid from under the table and returned to my seat without drawing attention. Around us, the band struck a bright chord and champagne glasses chimed. Smiles floated like confetti while I folded the scrap into my palm, feeling its brittle fibers and smelling the faint dust of paper ink. Maya looked up at me with trust too large for the moment. I guided her hand gently and said, "Go sit by Aunt Claire," my voice low and steady. I wanted to move without alarming the other guests. Old habits sharpen fast. I found myself scanning the room for servers who had lingered too long, noting who had walked past table 8 and who had glanced back. The greenhouse was full of good intentions and the kind of bustle people call celebration. That bustle could also hide a plan or a mistake pretending to be one. As I sat there with the paper folded in my palm, memories rose like small waves. The way my daughter used to shake flour from her hands at holiday baking, the ordinary comfort of holding a child's mitten. Those memories steadied me. They reminded me why we had been so careful, how love and vigilance had learned to move together in our family. I felt the texture of the linen against my knees and the soft press of Maya's shoulder against mine. The music swelled, and in that swell I made a small private decision. Keep the child safe first, then find out how such a note could have found its way into our night. Ryan always said that his wedding should feel simple but elegant. Those were his words, simple, elegant, as if those two could ever live together under one budget. Still, he'd done it. The greenhouse venue looked like a magazine cover, every table named after a flower, every candle the same precise height. I'd spent the week before helping with name cards, making sure Maya's place setting listed her allergy in clear block letters. See, I'd told the caterer, no peanuts, no tree nuts, not even garnish. The woman in black nodded, writing notes on her clipboard. At least, I thought, someone was listening. Ryan looked handsome that night, the soft gray suit his father once wore to an awards dinner. Nicole stood beside him in a gown that shimmered like cold champagne. She was all smiles for the guests, smiles that never quite reached her eyes. I tried not to judge. Weddings are stressful, I reminded myself, and new families always take a little sanding before the edges fit. Nicole had been kind enough, in her way, thoughtful texts, a few polite invitations, but there were moments, small, sharp ones, when she'd look at Maya as though the child were a leftover piece of another life she hadn't agreed to. Since my daughter's passing 3 years ago, Maya had lived more with me than with her father. Ryan traveled often for work. He called every night, but it was my kitchen where Maya learned to read recipes and measure sugar. Losing a daughter makes you memorize everything that's left, the pitch of her child's laugh, the outline of her nose. Ryan tried to move on, to heal, and I wanted that for him. Still, watching him promise forever to another woman felt like holding your breath underwater. You tell yourself you're fine until you surface, gasping. At the reception, I'd noticed Nicole's mother flitting around the staff like a general. She corrected table numbers, whispered into waiters' ears, scowled at the florist over a missing ribbon. Control ran in that family like a river, smooth and relentless. I told myself the note under our table must be a mistake, maybe leftover from catering instructions. But why specify child dessert? Why table 8, the only table where Maya sat? That word, peanuts, had a gravity all its own. From my seat near the window, I watched the kitchen doors open and close in rhythm. Plates moved out, empty trays returned. Each time a waiter passed, I caught myself checking their hands. I saw one young man adjust his apron and glance toward our table twice. He looked barely 20, face flushed from the heat of the ovens. When his eyes met mine, he looked away too fast. Maybe nerves, maybe nothing. My heart hadn't stopped its slow, steady drum since the moment I found the paper. Nicole approached then, her perfume sharp, her smile wide. "Everything okay, Evelyn? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," I said. "It's warm in here." She tilted her head. "Yes, they turned the heat up after the ceremony. Keeps the flowers happy." "Flowers," I murmured, folding my napkin. "And people too, I hope." She touched my shoulder lightly before turning to a guest behind me. Her hand lingered just long enough for me to notice the faint smudge of ink on her wrist, a single dark line like the mark from a black pen. I told myself not to connect dots that might not exist. I'd spent a lifetime trying to believe the best of people. Still, when I reached into my pocket and felt the paper there, the edges stiff and creased, I knew trust was a luxury we couldn't afford tonight. The band shifted to a slower song, the kind that fills air like syrup. Ryan danced with Maya near the center, his large hands guiding her tiny ones. For a moment, it was easy to forget the note, the suspicion, the tremor in my chest. The chandelier above them scattered gold across her hair, and I thought, this is what safety should look like. Then a waiter appeared at the dessert table, balancing a tray of chocolate tarts. I excused myself, moving carefully through clusters of guests. From the corner of my eye, I watched the tray descend, the waiter adjusting small plates. My breath caught as he placed one in front of Maya's seat. It was identical to the others, but a faint dusting of crushed nuts glimmered under the lights. I felt the old world tilt again. I reached out, steady, as if swatting away a fly. "Excuse me," I said, my voice low. "She won't be needing that." The young waiter blinked. "Ma'am?" "No peanuts," I said firmly. He frowned, confused, then looked down at his tray. "This one came straight from the kitchen, prepped special." I'm sure it did. I took the plate from his hands, my pulse loud in my ears. "Please bring a plain one, and tell whoever made this that someone nearly made a terrible mistake." He nodded, uncertain, and disappeared through the kitchen doors. I set the plate aside, away from reach, and pressed my palms against the tablecloth to steady myself. Around me, laughter carried on, oblivious. The band played another chorus. Across the room, Nicole watched me, just a second too long, before she turned back to her guests. By the time dinner plates were cleared, I decided not to tell anyone, yet. Panic spreads faster than truth, and I needed facts. The paper, still folded tight in my pocket, felt like a second pulse. Every time I reached for my glass, I brushed against it, as though to reassure myself it was real. Ryan was laughing near the head table, his arm around Nicole. She looked perfect again, no trace of the ink I'd seen before. When her gaze swept across the room, she looked like any proud bride, radiant, harmless. I wanted to believe that. God, I did. But belief is not protection. The dessert table drew guests like moths. I watched the same waiter from earlier deliver a tray of tarts to another table, no crushed nuts this time. His movements were cautious now. He must have realized he'd served the wrong dish, or maybe he'd been told to correct it. Either way, his eyes didn't meet mine again. I leaned toward Aunt Claire, who was fanning herself with the program. "Claire, can you stay with Maya a minute? I just need to check something." "Of course, Han," she said. "Everything all right?" "Just making sure of it," I said, forcing a smile. I slipped from the table and moved toward the kitchen doors. The air there smelled of sugar, grease, and something sharper, the metallic scent of heat lamps. I pushed through, pretending to look for the restroom, and found myself among clattering trays and the shouts of servers trying to outtalk the music from the dining hall. Behind the counter, a pastry chef piped frosting onto miniature cakes. I caught sight of an open binder near the sink, a printed menu with handwritten notes in the margins. I edged closer. In one corner, someone had scribbled, "Table 8, add crushed peanuts, bride request." My throat went dry. "Can I help you, ma'am?" The pastry chef's voice was polite but firm. "Yes," I said softly, keeping my tone steady. "Who wrote this?" I tapped the note with my fingertip. He looked down. "I don't know. The bride's coordinator drawed off adjustments this afternoon. I thought it was a late change." "Did you see her hand it over?" "No, ma'am. I just followed the notes." He looked uneasy now, glancing at the swinging doors. "Is something wrong?" I folded the binder shut. "Nothing you need to worry about. Thank you for your help." Back in the ballroom, the air felt heavier. My pulse had found a rhythm somewhere between dread and fury. Bride request. It echoed every time I blinked. But why? Why risk something so monstrous in a room full of witnesses? I found Claire still with Maya, the child now coloring on a napkin with borrowed crayons. Her innocence made the world feel crueler. I crouched beside her. "Having fun, sweetheart?" She nodded. "Daddy says we can dance again after cake." "Good," I said, my throat tight. "Just stay close to me, all right?" "Okay." Ryan came over then, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Mom, everything good?" "Perfect," I lied. He smiled, oblivious. "Nicole's mom wants a family picture soon." "I'll be there." He kissed Maya's hair and went back toward the photographer. I watched him walk away, a man who trusted too easily. Then my gaze shifted to Nicole. She was standing near the cake table, talking with a woman in catering black. Her fingers brushed her wrist, smearing something faint, ink maybe, or makeup. When the woman handed her a folded napkin, Nicole slipped it into her clutch without even looking at it. I moved toward the restroom corridor where the noise dimmed. The walls there were lined with mirrors and pale flowers. I pulled the paper from my pocket and studied the handwriting again. Jagged strokes, quick, right-handed, the same kind of pin mark I'd seen on Nicole's wrist. It could still be coincidence, I told myself. Coincidences happen in busy kitchens. But there was something else. A faint perfume on the paper, floral with a trace of vanilla, the exact scent Nicole wore. Back at our table, the cake cutting had begun. Guests cheered as the couple held the silver knife together, smiling for cameras. The moment felt cinematic, but beneath it I heard the hum of adrenaline in my ears. When they fed each other the first bites, I caught a glimpse of Nicole glancing toward Maya's chair. Not long, just enough. A chill ran through me. I reached into my purse for my phone, snapping a quick photo of the note under the table where I'd found it earlier, tape residue still visible under the linen. Evidence. Then I slid the phone back just as Nicole turned in my direction, her expression unreadable. She raised her glass across the room, smiling, and mouthed, "To family." I raised mine in return, my smile just as practiced. Beneath the table, my hand found Maya's. Her fingers were sticky with frosting, warm and real. Whatever truth waited behind that smile, I intended to find it, slowly, carefully, and before the night ended. I waited until the applause died down before slipping away again. The newlyweds had taken to the dance floor, camera flashes chasing their first steps. It was the perfect moment to disappear. The kitchen corridor was quieter now. Most of the servers were busy collecting empty plates. I stepped inside, my shoes clicking softly against the tiled floor. Near the sink, a young dishwasher stacked trays. The open binder from earlier was gone. I scanned the counter, no sign of the note or the crumbs of peanuts. Then, beside a crate of utensils, I noticed a crumpled napkin with faint brown streaks. I picked it up using another napkin, unfolded it gently. Written in the same quick hand, Table 8 confirmed. Below that, initials, N.M. Nicole Monroe. My chest tightened. There was no more guessing. My daughter's widow had married a woman who saw my granddaughter as an inconvenience to be erased. The thought burned. I tucked the napkin into my clutch and turned. The pastry chef spotted me again. "Ma'am, are you sure you're allowed back here?" "I won't be long," I said softly, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just looking for the event coordinator." He nodded uncertainly, and I slipped through a side door into the hallway where the staff kept coats and clipboards. The faint scent of perfume lingered, vanilla, the same as Nicole's. A clipboard hung on the wall, filled with printed checklists. On the bottom page, in the same handwriting, I read, "Dessert adjustment confirmed, N.M." My hand trembled as I pulled out my phone and took another photo. Footsteps echoed down the hall. I ducked behind the catering cart, heart hammering. Two voices approached, Nicole's crisp tone and a young woman's nervous replies. "Did anyone see you bring it out?" Nicole asked. "No, ma'am. I followed the list exactly. You said to." "I said to make sure it looks identical. The kitchen mixed it up, not me." "I'm sorry," the woman whispered. "I didn't know about the allergy." "Then forget you ever heard about it," Nicole snapped. "Do your job and serve the toast." Their heels clicked away, leaving silence and the faint tremor in my chest. I waited until the door shut before stepping out. The staff room light buzzed overhead, steady and merciless. So it was true. She'd planned something. Whether accident or malice didn't matter. She'd written those words, "Add peanuts," to a child's dessert, a child she smiled at every day. For a long minute I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter. Then a different instinct kicked in. Protect first, prove later. I slipped back into the ballroom, moving quickly through clusters of guests. Maya sat with Claire again, her cheeks flushed, the hem of her dress stained with chocolate. Relief washed through me just to see her breathing easy, unhurt. Claire looked up. "Everything all right, Evelyn? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I might have," I said. "Listen, take Maya to the garden for a minute. Fresh air will do her good." Claire frowned but didn't argue. "Come on, sweetheart," she said to Maya. "Let's go look at the fountain." When they left, I walked straight to the head table. Ryan was talking to the photographer, grinning wide. "Mom, isn't this great? Everyone's having such a good time." "Yes," I said, voice steady, "a wonderful time." I reached for his wine glass, pretending to adjust the centerpiece, and slipped the folded napkin, NM, under my own plate. Evidence safe. "You should get some water, Ryan. It's been a long day." He smiled, oblivious. "Sure thing, Mom." As he left, I glanced toward Nicole. She was thanking guests, radiant as ever. When she noticed me watching, her smile deepened. "Evelyn," she called, "everything all right? You've been up and down all evening." "I just needed to stretch my legs," I said. "At my age, we creak more than we clap." Her laugh was light, effortless. "You're sweet." She touched my arm briefly, and I caught the faintest trace of paper dust on her fingertips, powdery white, like the residue of folded stationery. She didn't notice me notice. The band switched songs. Guests clapped. The room turned in waves of color and perfume. I could feel the notes' corners pressing into my palm. Somewhere between rage and heartbreak, a thought began to form. I need another witness. Outside, the night had cooled. Lanterns glowed along the path leading to the garden. I found Claire and Maya near the fountain. "Claire," I said, "do me a favor. Keep her close, and if anyone tries to bring her food, call me." Claire nodded slowly. "Evelyn, what's going on?" "I'll explain later." I kissed Maya's head, inhaling the faint scent of frosting and innocence. "Promise me you'll stay right here." Back inside, I approached the restaurant manager, a stout man in a crisp white jacket. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "Could we talk in private?" He led me into the coat room, concern clouding his face. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" "Yes, a serious one." I handed him the napkin. "This was found in your kitchen. It references peanuts being added to a child's dessert. That child is my granddaughter, and she has a life-threatening allergy." His eyes widened. "Good Lord, who wrote this?" "That's what I want you to help me find out." He studied the initials. "These match the event planner's handwriting. Nicole Monroe?" "Bride," I said flatly. He exhaled. "I'll check the kitchen logs." As he hurried off, I leaned against the wall, feeling the night shift around me. The laughter from the ballroom muffled, like a dream I'd already left behind. When I looked down at my hands, they weren't trembling anymore. They were steady, ready for whatever came next. The manager returned 15 minutes later, his face pale and drawn. He motioned for me to follow him down a narrow hallway lined with storage crates. "Mrs. Evelyn," he said, lowering his voice, "you were right. The note didn't come from any of my staff. The only handwriting that matches those initials belongs to someone who filled out the event forms, Mrs. Nicole Monroe." I felt the world tilt again, though this time not from fear, but from something colder, clarity. "Did she access the kitchen tonight?" I asked. He nodded reluctantly. "Briefly, right before dessert service. Said she needed to check the plating." I pressed my lips together. "Where do you keep your security cameras?" He blinked. "You think she—" "Please," I said, "just show me." He led me to a small office near the back. The monitors glowed faint blue in the dim light. On one screen, time-stamped 30 minutes earlier, Nicole appeared in her white gown, head bent close to the dessert tray. She spoke to the young waiter, gesturing toward table 8. Even with no sound, the conversation carried a current of authority. At one point, she pulled something from her clutch, a folded paper, and slid it toward him. He nodded, uncertain, and she smiled that perfect practiced smile before disappearing from frame. "There," I said, "that's all I need." "Do you want me to confront her?" the manager asked. "Not yet," I said. "Make a copy of that footage, quietly." He hesitated. "You want to call the police?" "Not until the night is over. I want my granddaughter safe first." He swallowed and nodded. "I'll back you up." I left the office feeling the heat of righteous anger move through my chest. The chandeliers in the ballroom sparkled as though nothing had changed, but the night had new gravity now. I walked toward our table, each step deliberate. Maya was back, sitting beside Aunt Claire, sipping water through a straw. The sight of her calm face steadied me. Nicole stood across the room, laughing with guests, a picture of charm. When she saw me approach, her expression flickered, just a second, like a shadow crossing glass. "Evelyn," she said brightly, "you keep disappearing. I hope you're not avoiding family photos." "Of course not," I said, smiling with my teeth. "I just wanted to make sure everything runs perfectly. You've planned quite an evening." She laughed softly. "I try my best. You know how it is. Details make memories." "Indeed," I said, "details do make memories." Ryan joined us, wrapping an arm around his new wife. "Everything good here?" "Wonderful," Nicole purred. "Your mother was just telling me how beautiful everything is." I nodded. "Yes, almost too perfect." Ryan didn't catch the weight in my voice. "We're about to cut the second cake for photos. Come on, Mom, you have to be in them." "Of course." We posed under the archway while flashes went off. I smiled, because mothers always do, even when they're holding back storms. When the photos ended, I leaned close to Nicole and whispered, "After the toast, I'd like a word, privately." Her eyes widened slightly, then she nodded. "Of course." The next half hour crawled. I stayed near Maya and Claire, making small talk, waiting for my moment. When the band announced the final toast, Nicole lifted her glass. "To family," she said again, her voice clear and proud. "May we always take care of one another." The irony made my throat tighten. I raised my glass, drank nothing, and waited until the applause faded. Then I stepped forward. "Nicole," I said quietly, "could I borrow you for just a minute?" She smiled at the guests. "Excuse us, everyone. The mother of the groom has something for me, apparently." We slipped into the hallway behind the floral arch. The noise of celebration dulled to a distant hum. Nicole turned, still smiling. "Everything all right?" I held up the napkin with her initials. "You tell me." Her smile faltered. "Where did you get that?" "From your kitchen instructions, and I've seen the security footage." Her jaw tightened. "You went snooping?" "I went protecting," I said. "That note could have killed a child." She glanced toward the door, then back at me. "It was a misunderstanding." "Then explain it." Her hands twisted together, the pearls on her bracelet catching the light. "It wasn't supposed to. I didn't think they'd actually do it. It was just a test." "A test?" I repeated, disbelief rising. "I wanted to see if you were exaggerating about the allergy," she snapped, her voice low and sharp now. "Ryan worries constantly. I thought if it was mild." "Mild?" My voice broke. "You put a life at risk to ease your curiosity?" She stepped back, eyes flashing. "You don't understand what it's like, living in your shadow. Always, Grandma Evelyn says this, or Grandma knows best. I wanted to show him he overreacts, that he doesn't need you for everything. The words hung between us like broken glass. I took a long breath. You could have proven that by being kind. Her face twisted. You can't prove kindness to people who never believed you belonged. I stared at her, this woman who had smiled through her vows hours ago. You'll regret those words, I said softly. Not because I'll punish you, but because truth has a way of finding light. Before she could reply, the manager appeared beside us, holding his phone. Mrs. Monroe, he said grimly, you'll want to come with me. We've reviewed the footage. Her face drained of color. You can't. Let's talk in my office, he said. I turned away, leaving her frozen in the hallway. In the ballroom, the band had started another song. Maya waved at me from the dance floor, her laughter rising above the music. I smiled back, the first real smile in hours, and walked toward her, toward the only thing that mattered. They led Nicole into the small office near the back hall, the one with the humming monitor screens. Ryan followed, confusion and disbelief painted across his face. I stayed near the doorway, close enough to see but far enough not to interfere until I had to. The manager pressed play on the footage. The faint static filled the room. Then the camera caught Nicole leaning over the dessert tray, pointing toward a dish. Her expression on the screen wasn't malice. It was calm, composed, as though she were editing a document. The young waiter nodded, glancing at a note in his hand. Ryan's voice cracked. Nicole, what is this? She opened her mouth, closed it again. I already told your mother. It was a misunderstanding. I thought. You thought? His voice rose, raw. You thought risking Maya's life was a good idea? I didn't think it would reach her plate, she shouted back. To make me look paranoid? His hands trembled. To prove my mother wrong? What kind of person? I was trying to make this family normal again, she whispered, tears pooling but not falling. Your daughter's allergy dictates everything. Every dinner, every trip. I thought if it wasn't that bad. I stepped forward. You thought wrong. The silence afterward felt heavy enough to crush air. The only sound was the faint whir of the monitors. Ryan stared at her like she turned into someone else entirely. You put her life at risk on our wedding day. Nicole's lip quivered. I didn't mean. You did, he said. You wrote the note, you gave it to the waiter. That's meaning enough. The manager cleared his throat. Mrs. Monroe, I'm obligated to report this. Food tampering, even if unintended, is a serious offense, especially with a documented allergy. Nicole's eyes widened. No, please, not the police. I'll explain, Ryan turned away. Explain to them. Her hands fluttered to his sleeve, but he stepped back. The sob that escaped her sounded less like regret and more like fear of consequence. I felt no satisfaction watching it, just a quiet exhaustion that reached the bone. I took the paper evidence from my clutch and handed it to the manager. Here, everything you need. He nodded solemnly. We'll handle this discreetly. Discreetly, I echoed, but not silently. Outside the office, the air was cooler, almost gentle. I walked back through the hallway toward the ballroom, where the laughter and music seemed softer now, like echoes of another lifetime. Maya was sitting at a table drawing shapes on a napkin. When she saw me, she smiled and waved her crayon. Grandma, I drew us. I knelt beside her, studying the stick figures, one tall, one small, both with halos of curls and big smiles. It's perfect, I whispered, my voice catching. Ryan joined us a few minutes later. His shoulders were slumped, his tie loose, the glow of celebration gone. He didn't speak at first, just watched Maya color. Then he sank into the chair beside me. She admitted it, he said quietly. I know. She said it was an accident, that she didn't mean harm. Some accidents start with choices, I said, and this one started long before dessert. He rubbed his eyes. I don't know what happens now. Then start with protecting your daughter. Everything else can wait. He nodded, still staring at the tablecloth. For the first time that night, he looked like a child again. My child, small and frightened. I reached over, covered his hand with mine. You did what you had to do. That's what being a parent means. The rest of the reception blurred. Guests began to leave, murmuring polite goodbyes, unaware of the storm that had passed through the evening like a shadow. The air smelled of melted wax and trampled roses. When the last song ended, I walked Maya out into the parking lot. She was sleepy, her head heavy against my shoulder. As we waited for Ryan, I looked back through the glass wall of the greenhouse. The lights inside still glowed warm and golden. From this distance, you'd never guess that beneath one tablecloth, taped where no one should have looked, a note had once threatened to end everything. In that glow, I saw the reflection of my own face, older, lined, but steady. I thought of my daughter, gone too soon, and the promise I'd made at her funeral to protect what was left of her with everything I had. Tonight, I'd kept that promise. Ryan stepped out behind us, his jacket over one arm. "Mom," he said softly, "thank you." I smiled, brushing a curl from Maya's forehead, just doing what mothers do. He looked back at the venue once more. "I'll call the lawyer in the morning." "Get some sleep first," I said. "Tomorrow will be heavy enough." He nodded. We drove away in silence, the road ahead long and dark, headlights cutting through the mist. I watched the world blur past, the trees, the reflections, the faint trace of wedding music still clinging to memory. And I thought, sometimes the most dangerous things don't hide in darkness. They hide in celebration, under linen and laughter, waiting for someone brave enough to look. The morning after the wedding was gray and wet, as if the sky itself were trying to wash the night clean. I woke to the steady patter of rain on my kitchen window, the same rhythm that used to lull Maya to sleep when she was a baby. She sat at the table now, still in her pink pajamas, spooning cereal one piece at a time. She had no memory of danger, no idea how close she'd come to never waking again. That innocence was both a mercy and a wound. Ryan arrived not long after, the exhaustion etched into every movement. His tie was gone, his eyes rimmed red. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stood for a long moment, just staring out at the rain. "They took her in last night," he said finally. "Nicole, the police met us at the hotel." I nodded. "I'm sorry, it had to be that way." He rubbed the back of his neck. The manager handed them the footage, the notes, everything. She didn't deny it, just kept saying it was a mistake. "She'll say that forever," I murmured. "People who hurt out of pride always call it a misunderstanding." He looked down at his cup, his voice small. "I keep asking myself how I didn't see it. She seemed kind," I finished. "Charm and kindness wear the same perfume, until you look closer." He sank into the chair across from Maya. "I don't even know how to explain this to her when she's older." "You won't have to. The truth will reach her in its own time. What she'll remember is that you kept her safe." He nodded, though his gaze stayed far away, somewhere in the fog outside. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was the kind born of shock, of realizing life had split into a before and after. Later that afternoon, an officer came to take my formal statement. She was young, polite, and terribly careful with her words. "We're treating this as reckless endangerment," she explained. "It's unlikely she'll face jail time, but there will be consequences. Restraining order, community service, possibly mandated counseling." I thanked her for her professionalism. When she left, Ryan exhaled a sound that wasn't quite relief. "So, it's over," he said. "It's quieter," I corrected. "That's not the same." That evening, after Maya went to bed, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my knees and the paper evidence folded in a plastic bag on the table beside me. The ink had smudged slightly, the word peanuts blurred at the edges. I'd spent a lifetime collecting recipes written by hand, but I'd never hated handwriting until now. The porch light flickered. From the kitchen, I heard Ryan moving dishes, the muted sounds of a man trying to keep busy because silence is too loud. I let the rain smell drift through the open door and thought about my daughter again. Her laugh, her stubborn streak, the way she used to say, "Mom, you worry too much." Maybe she was right, or maybe this worry had been my last inheritance to her child. My phone buzzed. A text from the event manager. "Footage secured. Police have everything. Hope your family is okay." I typed back, "We are, thanks to you." I slipped the phone away and listened to the rain until it softened into mist. Then the porch creaked. Ryan stepped out and sat beside me. For a while, we just watched the trees drip. "Mom," he said quietly, "I told Nicole I wanted an annulment." I turned to him. "Are you sure?" "She crossed a line we can't fix. It wasn't just about Maya. It was about control." I nodded slowly. "Then let this be the last time she controls anything." He managed a thin smile. "You always sound so certain." "I just sound old," I said, reaching for his hand. "Age teaches you which fears to listen to." The sky dimmed, turning that strange blue that only happens between storms. The world smelled of wet soil and new beginnings. Maya stirred inside, murmuring in her sleep, and the sound threaded through the house like a fragile hymn. Ryan looked toward her window. "She's dreaming," he said softly. "She never dreams when she's scared." "Good," I whispered. "Let her keep that." He stood, kissed my forehead, and went back inside. I stayed a little longer, tracing the rain streaks on the window. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, then faded into quiet. I imagined Nicole sitting in some small room, replaying every choice that led her there. Regret would find her eventually, the same way rain finds every crack and settles there. When I finally rose to go inside, I caught sight of our reflection in the glass. 3 generations, bruised but unbroken. The world could test us, lie to us, even try to poison what we loved. But love, when it's true, knows how to detect danger by instinct alone. 2 weeks passed before the air finally felt breathable again. The wedding photos arrived in a glossy envelope. Hundreds of them, frozen smiles and sparkling lights, memories lacquered over with what we now knew. I flipped through them at the kitchen table one evening while the kettle whispered on the stove. Each picture was a contradiction, happiness posing beside danger. In one frame, Maya twirled on the dance floor, her pink dress flaring like a bell. In another, Nicole stood beside Ryan, chin lifted, perfect. You couldn't see guilt in her expression, only poise. The camera had captured the version of her that the world believed in, the version that nearly cost us everything. I set the photos aside and poured tea, letting the steam rise between me and the ghosts. Ryan had moved back into the house for now. He spent mornings on the phone with lawyers, afternoons helping me in the garden. He'd lost weight, but some colors, like laughter, were starting to return to his face. Every evening, he joined Maya and me for dinner. We ate simple food, safe food, double-checked labels, and smiled when we realized we'd done it without thinking. Safety had become second nature again. One night, as we washed dishes, Ryan said quietly, The detective told me Nicole asked about us. She wants to apologize. I dried my hands. Apologies are words. What she needs to give is silence. He nodded. I won't let her near Maya. There's a restraining order now. Good. He looked at me for a long moment. Do you ever think we attract bad luck? I shook my head. Not bad luck, just reminders that love has to stay awake. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the windows. The season was shifting, spring stretching its fingers into early summer. I thought about how, even after storms, the ground remembers to bloom. Maybe that was forgiveness in its purest form, not forgetting, but growing anyway. Later that week, I drove Maya to school. She waved at me from the gates, her small backpack bouncing as she ran toward her friends. That sight, so ordinary, filled me with a joy that hurt. On the drive home, I passed the church where the wedding had taken place. Workers were setting up for another ceremony. Fresh roses, clean linens, a blank canvas of celebration. I parked for a moment, watching strangers rehearse joy where ours had faltered. For the first time since that night, I walked inside. The air smelled of wax and flowers. The sunlight slanted through stained glass, scattering color across the pews. I sat down, not to pray, but to breathe. Memories flickered, the music, the laughter, the paper that nearly killed. I reached into my bag and unfolded that same note, now sealed in a plastic sleeve. The ink had faded, but the message still burned. Table 8, add peanuts to child dessert. I'd kept it not as a wound, but as proof that vigilance saves. One day, when Maya is older, I'll show it to her. I'll tell her how danger can hide behind smiles, and how courage sometimes looks like curiosity. The courage to look under the table when no one else does. When I stepped back outside, the air was bright with the smell of rain-soaked earth. I tilted my face to the sky, felt the warmth of sunlight, and whispered, "We made it." At home, I pinned the faded paper inside an old recipe book, between pages for sugar cookies and holiday fudge. A warning tucked inside sweetness where it belonged. That night, Maya climbed into my lap with a picture she'd drawn at school, 2 hearts joined by a bridge of crayon rainbows. "That's us," she said. I smiled. "It's perfect." She looked up at me, serious. "You always look under the table, right, Grandma?" I brushed a curl from her cheek. "Always, sweetheart, always." And as I held her, I realized that the most ordinary promises are the ones that save us. The quiet vow to pay attention, to stay kind but alert, to believe in love without surrendering to blindness. That's how families survive. That's how we did. Outside, the night softened. The house hummed with safety, the way homes do after storms. I turned off the light, letting only the moon spill across the floor, silver and calm, proof that darkness can hold light if you let it. There are stories that end in noise, and there are stories that end in quiet. Ours settled somewhere in between, the steady hum of a kitchen at night, the safe weight of a sleeping child's breath, the faint echo of music from a wedding that tried to break us but failed. When I look back, I don't see villains and victims as much as I see choices, small, invisible ones that build toward danger or toward safety. A single decision to double-check ingredients, to listen to a whisper, to question what everyone else assumes is fine, those choices save lives. People say courage looks like running into fires, but sometimes courage looks like paying attention when no one else does. It's bending under a table in your best dress because a child trusts you more than she fears embarrassment. It's saying no softly but firmly, even when everyone around you is smiling. If there's a lesson I'll carry until my hand stops steadying teacups, it's this: love isn't loud. Love is alert. It's the quiet vow we make every morning to protect, to notice, to keep the people we love safe even from the dangers that hide behind good manners. And maybe that's what justice looks like for ordinary people like us. Not revenge, not punishment, but prevention. The knowledge that we caught the darkness before it grew teeth. So tonight, wherever you are, remember this story when something inside you whispers, "Look closer." Maybe it's not paranoia. Maybe it's protection. Before you go, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and if you've ever trusted a hunch that saved you. And if this story stayed with you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs a reminder that vigilance is a form of love, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Because every voice, even an old one like mine, carries lessons worth hearing if we just listen closely enough.